Yeah, welcome into the Thursday edition. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get it all. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Thursday morning. Joseph, good morning. How we doing? What's going on?
Doing just fine. Doing just fine. Congrats to D-Mace. Congrats to our D-Mace,
Yes.
Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame. I was just watching the video before the show. Pretty awesome, man. Cool. Brad Willis, well done. And a nice job not blowing it. V and D on DVD.
Other
not
D,
blowing
yes.
it. Yeah, V and other D.
Yep.
Sorry, I just called those guys VD. Sorry, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, Vengen and Donick.
Yeah. VD
Yeah.
from DVD.
Those guys.
Yeah. Nice job not blowing it. But the bottom line is congrats to D-Mace.
Yes. I was at
well
the arena
deserved.
And I looked in the parking lot and Brad Willis was there. I was like, hey, what are you doing here? And he told me. I was like, oh, cool.
Yeah, I saw Sean and a bunch of folks from the office were gathered around.
Yeah.
It's cool, man.
Good
That's
stuff.
awesome. Yes.
Very deserving. Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame, class of 2025, Derek Mason. Nick Keyser, how we doing? What's going on?
Morning. Doing well. A little tired after last night, but we're vibing, man.
A little bit of a late night at Bridgestone Arena.
Yes. Very
And
much
quite
so.
frankly, one of the more sleeper hockey games of the entire year. Not a whole lot going on in that one last night. Preds lose 3-1 to Canucks. We'll get more specifically into that a little bit later. But late night and not a whole lot to show for it for the local professional hockey team.
We're vibing, huh? Well, the Preds sure aren't vibing.
You trying to bring that back?
Trying to bring that back, yeah.
I mean,
Thank
I'm
you.
All right.
No,
I'm vibing.
pleading the fifth. All right. We're
just
vibing.
hanging
We have
out.
coffee. We have coffee.
Sure
We're
do.
vibing. That's right.
Sure do. We got a lot to get into on the program here today. We're going to get back into Joe Rexrode's favorite topic where he can just absolutely obliterate Tom Brady a little bit later in the show.
I love that guy.
So we will get back into that later in the program. A passionate discussion on that front to end the show yesterday. Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports will be with us at 8 o'clock. We'll get into the Titans and all things NFL with him, his thoughts on the Super Bowl matchup. Take your thoughts throughout the show, 615-737-1025. So, Joe, we've spent and will spend a lot of time talking about the NFL draft. What about the other part of this offseason that is going to be maybe a potentially heavily influence on what the roster looks like next year and how this team performs? Free agency coming up in March. The Titans obviously very active in free agency this past season, and that was to a varying degree of effectiveness with the players that they signed. Some worked out pretty well, some not so much, some injured for a large chunk of the year. So there's a different way that this all kind of shook out there. According to overthecap.com, as we sit here today, Joe, the Titans have roughly $44 million in cap space. That's not at the top of the league, which belongs to Mike Vrabel and the New England Patriots, who have roughly $120 million in
Go
cap
Braves.
space. Vrabel's got all the cap space in the world. But they are, in the upper half of the league in terms of the cap space that they've got available to them. You look at the free agent crop, or at least the players who could potentially become free agents this offseason, and there are some intriguing names. They did a piece at ESPN.com where Matt Bowen kind of ranked his top 50 players that could be available in free agency, some of which are very interesting. We'll get to some specifically here in just a few minutes. But I want to start with this with you. If you're the Tennessee Titans, how involved in free agency should you be? How big of a factor should that be in your strategy this offseason? Because, Joe, I have heard the narrative thrown out there of, well, Titans were really active in free agency last offseason, and it did not necessarily work out for them. So maybe they shouldn't do that again this offseason. Your thoughts on the free agency period that is coming up here in about a month and a half and how active the Tennessee Titans should be?
Yeah, I got a wide open three. I took it and I missed it. So I should never take another wide open three. Yeah, it's a terrible way to look at it. They should absolutely be active, very active. They just have to be smart. And I'm not saying they should necessarily be active with high price items. Although, look, if you find the right one, I mean, we were talking yesterday about Trey Smith, and I know we can get into some of these specific guys. I was kind of surprised at some of the projections of his His number. Do you want to pay an interior offensive lineman a whole bunch of money on his second deal? I mean, it doesn't sound great to me, but you know what? Is he going to be a really good to great player for you for 4 years? I mean, okay. Because look, the cap is malleable. And they already have space. And yeah, they have a ton of work to do. Like the idea, the draft and develop thing's great. Every team wants to do that. Also, every team in this league, look at the Super Bowl teams, look at anybody who's good. They have made some key free agent acquisitions. You can't do it without both. You have to do both. Yes, the draft is more important. These teams, the top teams, more of their roster can be traced to excellent drafting than free agent signing. But again, you got to do both. So they should be very active in free agency. They have a ton to do. And this league, there's no waiting around to try to be good, Yeah, no one's expecting you to be a contender next year, but try to be good.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think the idea that just because you had the busiest offseason you've had in terms of just the free agent part of it in the history of your franchise last year, and it didn't result in, a ton of wins for you, like that doesn't mean that you just abandon free agency moving forward here. Now, I do think you have to be pretty selective. Like, spending money for the sake of spending money is how teams get in trouble. And you don't want to give a lot of money. Dan Orlovsky and others have talked about this. Like, some of the problems in the NFL is when you're paying elite money to guys who are not elite players. Like, you run into trouble when you do that. So you got to be really, I think, selective and detailed in your process as to who you're giving some of these deals to. But I mean, you do have $44 million in cap space. Your roster needs an incredible amount of help. Like, you need a big turnover of this roster. And you're just not going to be able to do all of that in the draft. Like, you're going to have to supplement your plan in the draft. And you can have draft and develop and retain as your model and the way you want to operate. But you're going to have to supplement that in free agency. And by the way, like, I don't know that you construct a championship team off of free agency, but I do think sometimes it can be your final piece, right? Like, look at the Eagles. Look at the Eagles with Saquon Barkley. It's working out pretty well for them. Now, this was not a free agency pickup that they had, but it was an offseason pickup that wasn't a draft pick in the A.J. Brown trade, right? Like, you can supplement your roster either via trade or free agency in the offseason, and it can work out really well for you in the NFL as well.
Yeah, and then their secondary has also had some key free agent signings too. Yeah, and the funny thing about them is the Brown trade was the result of they just had terrible luck drafting receivers, So they're like, all right, I know that guy's good, so go get that guy, Let's
so is it like if we can
find a sucker, yes, and somebody else too, but yes, he was one of them. So yeah, let's see. I mean, the Chiefs, a lot of their receiving core, it's cast offs basically. They're pretty homegrown. I'm trying to think on the defensive side of the ball. I think they've got to have a couple guys over there. I mean, they're pretty homegrown, but obviously they've they brought Kareem Hunt back, which is wild to me that he's been as effective as he has. It's like, if he's in a Kansas City uniform, then he gets into the hot tub time machine, goes back 5 years. But you have to do some of this for sure. And the Titans have, just to get to decent, solid, you're not getting there you can have the greatest draft of all time and it's not getting you there.
Well, and we've talked about free agency in terms of quarterback, that I still think you can't remove that as a possibility for the Titans this offseason in terms of addressing the quarterback position in free agency. And, Sam Darnold, until he's tagged, is a potential on that list. Now, we'll see. I'm still going to be stunned if he's not tagged, and then we'll see what Minnesota decides to do with him. Justin Fields, probably going to be available in free agency. Kirk Cousins is probably going to be available in free agency. So there's the quarterback part of this that we can certainly touch on as it relates to this. That's part of this discussion. And there's also, like, do you get yourself involved in some of the higher price guys that could be out there? Now, T. Higgins tops that list. T. Higgins is probably going to be available. The conjecture out of Cincinnati is it's just going to be hard to pay all of those guys. It's going to be hard to pay Burrow and Chase and then Higgins and then build that team up around them. So I think the expectation is that T. Higgins is going to be out there and is going to be available. That was a big part of the conversation last year heading into the offseason for Titans fans of could you land T. Higgins. Now, you went out and got Calvin Ridley, and you spent significant money on him. So do you want to double down on that at wide receiver in the offseason? There's Trey Smith, who is number 2 on this free agent list that Matt Bowen has put out there. Does Kansas City end up tagging him at the end of the year? Maybe. But if not, he's going to be probably the highest price guard out there available in free agency. They've listed Ronnie Stanley on this too from Baltimore and DJ Reed from the Jets, Chris Godwin from the Bucs. There are a lot of these guys that are on this free agent list that probably ultimately are not going to make it to free agency. So that's the other part of this is how many of these guys actually get to free agency and how many of these guys either come to a long-term deal or are tagged by their team.
Yeah, right. I mean, my first impulse on receiver is, is this a team right now? I just said you were trying to get good, but is this a team right now where you want to have 2 receivers making significant money? I think you'd really love to find a young receiver. The problem is, okay, well, you don't have a 3rd-round pick and you have all these other needs. So are you actually going to be able to address that effectively in the draft? But
right.
I feel like maybe receiver should be a more of a mid-priced search, which I don't even know who that would be. Is there any other receivers on this list? I'm trying to call this up.
Well, they've got Stephon Diggs on this thing. Now I'm interested to see what happens with him. Darius Slayton from the Giants is on the list as well. And, I don't know that Darius Slayton's going to cost you a ton, but, what sort of role?
Do much
Yeah, I was about to say, like, what sort of role would he play? I mean, Keenan Allen, what's going to happen with him in Chicago? He's 33. So I don't know. Like, does Keenan Allen change the equation that much here?
No.
There's not a ton of great options when it relates to the wide receiver part of this.
I have an idea. Pay NWI.
Well,
there's an idea.
That could be
Just
part of the plan.
Him. Just tag him.
So how active should the Titans be in free agency? And who are some of the top targets that you would have in mind if you're Mike Borgonzi, Chad Brinker, and the Titans formulating your plan this offseason? We'll continue that discussion coming up next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We are live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. How active should the Titans be in free agency? And who are some of your top targets if you are the Titans looking ahead to free agency this season? Now, Joe, a lot of people have brought up the name Trey Smith. Obviously, there's a connection here with him being from Tennessee, going to Tennessee. He's been an excellent player in Kansas City, and we'll see what the plan ends up being for Kansas City and Trey Smith in the offseason. Now, I'm looking at these PFF projections here in terms of free agency and some of the money these guys can get. And here's the little blurb that they've got on Trey Smith. Smith's 78.8 PFF overall grade, which I know Rex was very excited about.
Oh,
in the regular
in
season,
that case,
ranked 11th among all guards, and he'll still be only 25 years old when free agency opens. That's a good combination for a big payday, given that multiple players at that position signed deals at or exceeding $20 million per year in 2024. So, if that's what the market is for Trey Smith and it's 20 some odd $1 million per year, what do you think of that? And should the Titans be interested in that? If in fact he does make it to free agency and get snatched away from Kansas City.
just sounds like a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
But yeah, I think you have to look into it. Bring Trey Smith home. He's very good though. And man, obviously the whole blood clotting thing was part of the, I think, hesitation for some people because they just weren't sure. So I get that, but man, go back to that one draft where they could have had him, and I don't remember who they took, but it was someone who did not play well.
5 people at least ahead of him.
Yeah.
He went in the 6th round.
Yeah.
A lot of people passed on Trey Smith.
They did. Exactly. So, man, I don't know. I mean, he is a guard,
He's a guard.
But the guards are important. They are, it's not like tackles make up, you go by the salary scale and you can't say it's just 20% for each of the 5 spots across the board. But I think some people seem to think like tackles occupy like 80% of what matters. And then the rest is just, throw some guys in there, And if you have a weak link at any spot, including either guard, that can mess everything up. So the funny thing is Dylan Radins actually, I think, was one of the positive stories of the offensive line last year. But again, that's also still coming from expectations and coming from his previous performance. But he was serviceable. Like now, of course, he's a free agent too.
Yeah.
Probably not going to get the same payday as Trey Smith.
Probably not.
But you got to figure something out there. I just don't know if you really want to devote that much cash to Trey Smith.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's a really good player, and he's probably, with the market being what it is, he's probably worth that money. Is that where you want to allocate it right now? I mean, I think the natural response from a Titans fan, if you're looking to pay a lot of money on your offensive line, would be like, well, do it for a tackle. Go get either a left or a right tackle,
right,
and bring them in, and then pay somebody doing that. The problem is, now how many tackles of that quality are going to be available? I mentioned that this list on ESPN.com that Matt Bowen has put together has Ronnie Stanley, no relation to me, cousin Ronnie, as the number 3 overall prospect or overall free agent here. Like, he's 31 next year. I just have a tough time believing Baltimore is going to let him go.
Yeah.
So you've got him. They've also, in this piece here, put Cam Robinson, who was with Minnesota. Now, that one is interesting because Cam Robinson, he'll be 29 next year. They did trade for him from Jacksonville, and they brought him in. And you could tag him, but you also have Sam Darnold. So, like, you can't tag everybody in Minnesota. So that one is going to be interesting. Like, if they make the decision to tag Sam Darnold, does Cam Robinson make it to free agency? Is Minnesota able to find a way to pay him? They've talked about in this feast that, Jeremy Fowler kind of contributed to this as well. And he's talking about the Rams and the Chiefs could potentially be looking for some help at tackle. But like, if you're the Titans and a guy like Cam Robinson made it to free agency, would you put yourself in that mix? And then you get back into the whole, all right, well, where's J.C. Latham playing? Are you moving him over to right? Do you feel staunch in your stance that you got to keep him at left tackle? You got to figure all that out if you're the Titans.
Yeah, well, that is, and that's a very interesting, situation with the Vikings for sure. I mean, I'm just assuming that they're going to tag Darnold, and possibly even give him a deal. But that would be interesting. A lot of moving parts out there for sure. I mean, I agree with the idea that tackle is obviously the priority. I mean, I just said guards are important, but it's just that was such a problematic. Like if you actually address that effectively. And then center to left tackle took steps forward as you hope. And again, some of that is the health of Cushenberry. But then, you can't, offensive line can get away with one, not disaster spot, but like with one, weaker, less invested in spot, I mean, these offensive lines in the Super Bowl, I saw something the other day. I think it was actually Robert May's podcast, talking about the investment in these offensive lines. It's first and second round picks with like 3-4 spots, but then there's, you're inevitably you're going to have one spot where it's a plan B free agent or a fourth round pick or whatever it is. So that's what, I mean, in general, I think if there's a way to figure it out at right tackle, then that's definitely where I would put the resources over guard.
Here's where I come down on the T. Higgins stuff. So, generally speaking, I don't love the idea of paying 2 wide receivers a boatload of money. Having said that, I'm looking at we talked about the path to get that next young receiver yesterday, right? I just don't know that they're going to be able to do that effectively in this draft. Like, this is a draft where not having a 3rd round pick is really detrimental. Now, that equation could change. They could trade back from number 1 and they could pick up some more picks, and then maybe we're having a different conversation at that point. But I don't know that you're going to know by the time free agency rolls around in March that you're going to be able to trade back. Maybe you do. I mean, look, there have been drafts before where teams had already traded the pick by the time free agency had come around. So maybe you do know what your plan is going to be with your number 1 overall pick and what's realistic to execute by that point. But to me, you have to get receiver figured out one way or the other. Like whatever the next quarterback looks like, whether it's a rookie or you're bringing in a veteran, like they need a bolstered wide receiver core as to what they've had around here. Problem is, going back to T. Higgins specifically, Joe, like I think he's going to get paid like a number 1 wide receiver, and I just don't think he's a number 1 wide receiver. I think he's a really good number 2. So do you want to spend that money on T. Higgins when I'm just not convinced that he's a true number 1. And oh, by the way, injuries have been a problem from him the last couple of years.
Yeah, he ended the year just, looking like a number 1 receiver. So it's like, man, good timing for him because he was healthy on the field and they were just going up and down the field on people.
Yep.
Again, him and Jamar Chase.
And Joe Burrow. That's a heck of a trio.
Yes. It helps to have Joe Burrow thrown to you. It helps to have Jamar chasing the other side of the field. But I'm with you. I think the injuries that's the thing that really scares me away a little bit. There's the whole Callahan, that has to matter. It might matter some in helping get him if it were to get to that. And then obviously, I mean, Callahan knows him probably as well as any coach in the league, right?
So, I would assume so. Yep.
So if he thinks I don't know, maybe they're not listening to Callahan. And thanks, Brian. Yeah, you put that in the suggestion box, and we'll look at it.
Brian, we're gonna go talk to T. Higgins. We're not bringing you with us.
Yeah, exactly. We'll let you know. No, but I mean, seriously, that he would have a great feel for like, yes, actually, this is worth it.
Right.
I mean, but you can't predict injuries, and everybody can see that the guy's been hurt multiple times.
Well, and here's the other part of that. The Titans are not in a position. I don't know how much this actually happens once you get to free agency, but the Titans are in no position right now where somebody's taking some. They're gonna have to overpay.
Yeah.
So
there's a tax.
There's you're 3-14. That's part of it. Like I think it's an easier sell if somebody makes it to free agency and winning's really important to them. And they want to go play in Kansas City. Maybe they do take a little bit less. Probably not going to be the case here with the Titans. So
right.
Are you comfortable handing out that money?
Yeah, probably not. I mean, you have Nashville, you have the city, and you have the no state income tax. So you have some things you can But yeah, when you're 3-14, that's just an automatic tax. That replaces state income tax.
615-737-1025. Our phone number. More of your thoughts on the Titans and NFL free agency coming up next. We'll have the best and worst things in sports at 6:45. All that ahead. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063 The Game. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We'll have the best and worst things in sports coming up here in about 15 minutes, so we'll take your thoughts on that as well. NFL free agency, how active should the Titans be in free agency? Who are some of your top targets? Ethan from Lawrenceburg throwing Cam Robinson out there as well, who we just discussed. Josh from Cookeville on the text line says, I'm hopeful that some of our guys from free agency last year can have a big step up in consistency and performance. I hope Snead can be back fully and healthy. Also, that Ridley gets more looks early on and that they pay NWI. I want them to be selective in free agency this year. This is from Josh in Cookeville. I mean, I think of their own free agents, NWI pretty high up on the list of a priority. I don't know that a ton of their own free agents, Joe, are priorities, but NWI probably should be.
Yeah, absolutely. Good player. I have to get after the distinguished gentleman here on the YouTube chat.
Okay.
He said, Boyd, T, Ridley, and Chig. Wow. I said, you've been watching Boyd and Chig play? Wow. Then George said, well, we can get to, we go to, he says, I'm not evaluating anyone with that horrendous QB play. I went to every game. The players were wide open all season. Just wide open.
I don't know if they were wide open all season.
Tyler Boyd is, I mean, come on, man. Tyler Boyd.
They don't need to bring Tyler.
There's a reason the market for Tyler Boyd was what it was, and he confirmed that. I mean, he's
he's
close to the end. Yeah, he's a diminished player, and come on. Chig is fine, but I mean, the Titans can absolutely be better at tight end. And again, that's another spot where it's like, how much do you prioritize that? I don't know. I mean, I think if you traded down and you came across Tyler Warren, okay,
I'd be probably consider
that guy. I think is going to be awfully good, but yeah, I'm just ripping on you, distinguished gentleman, who a very consistent contributor to the YouTube chat. But yeah, it's not that Yeah, QB play was bad this year, but let's not pretend it was like bad QB
just
play with the
open season out there
with the the Smurfs from my beloved Washington early '80s champions. It wasn't quite that.
Well, look, tight end I think is a problem with this team. I think Josh Wiley and Chig are both fine. I think they're also both not close to high-level starting tight ends in the National Football League. Now that gets back into, all right, well, how much can you really do in one offseason? Like with all the needs you have, where does tight end fall in line with that? I don't know. Like I think tight end's probably pretty far down the list in terms of the needs that this team has, but they do need to upgrade there at some point. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be this offseason, but at some point here in the not too distant future, they're going to have to find a tight end because those two guys, no disrespect, they're fine players, but they're not difference-making tight ends.
Yeah, but it does that position. It kind of seems like a luxury position to have. That there are teams that don't have difference-making tight ends, but if you have enough other good stuff, you can be fine, right? So it'd be great to have. But to me, it's like you have to have a right tackle. You have to have a better offensive line. You have to have a better quarterback. You have to have some, to me, young, ideally, answer at receiver.
Indy Ben says, remember, Borgonzi comes from the John Dorsey tree, just like Ballard. So don't expect a ton of free agency action. It's been a frustration for Colts fans for years, although he did find gems like Danico Autry and Kenny Moore. This is from Indy Ben on the text line. Thank you, Indy Ben. We appreciate you waiting.
Indy Ben, he's back. No, that's a good point. I mean, there's definitely been frustration with Ballard amid people saying, what an incredible GM. I guess it's just, not signing people is a great thing.
Guy's got a lot of job security.
Yeah. There have definitely been some years where it's like the Colts have all this cap space and they use very little. It's like, wow, he is so smart not using that cap space. And then they're not a very good team.
I got one text that says, I don't know, Joe. Chig was pretty good with Rudolph, but with Levis, he definitely wasn't getting the looks. This from Markel.
I mean, I'm not saying he's bad. He's fine.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, what's our definition of pretty good? Like, he's fine.
He makes some plays.
I'm not saying that he's totally incapable of playing the position. He's just not a difference maker.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
they need difference makers.
Like as a rookie, he had a couple, a few big plays. You're like, okay. And there was all this hype. And I remember that. Look, I was guilty too during that camp because in camp, he was making big plays.
Yeah.
So there was all this hype about Chig becoming this, wow, look who they found. They found, because some of these tight ends in the league, some of the best tight ends in the league are middle round guys. And I'm not saying anybody was, although did Byard say something about him?
I can't. No, he said something about who was the tight end they had before. I can't even think. It wasn't the one before Hooper. Why am I blanking on the tight end that they had?
So after Delaney Walker.
Yeah. He called him like a top flight tight end, and I can't remember who it was.
That wasn't Chig.
It was not Chig. It was pre-Chig.
You can't have old brain too, man.
Yeah, I know. I got to figure that out.
We got old brain on this side.
Why can I not think of who that was?
I'm expecting the text line to flood us with the answer, but there was a lot of hype for Chig, and he hasn't. He is a middle round pick tight end. He makes some plays. He's fine, but you can upgrade from there. Is that a priority? I would not say it's high on the list, but at some point it'd be good if they could do that.
Yeah, like, and wide receiver to me is still more important. Like, you got to find some solutions at wide receiver as they move forward here. And again, like, a lot of this is gonna come down to like what's your quarterback plan? Are you going the veteran route and you're bringing in a veteran quarterback and trying to kind of build up the roster that way? By the way, Ian is texting in Ferkser. Yes, Anthony Ferkser.
Yeah, other people on the text are saying Janu, but that's not.
No.
You're
Ferkser.
right. It was Ferkser.
It was
like
Ferkser.
This Ferkser is gonna be my
top flight
goodness.
tight end. Yeah, like, okay, maybe we'll see it.
And also
Did not happen.
Also, LSU guy, great name,
Racing McMahon.
Yeah, he's gonna be the next Julio Jones.
Julio Jones. Yeah,
good stuff. Kevin Byard, love you, great player. Don't go into player evaluation.
I don't know that the talent evaluation was quite there.
Actually, I think it was AJ who said that. It was AJ.
That was AJ.
It was AJ who said that about.
It kind of reminds me of Julio. It's like, really?
Okay.
It's good. Yeah, Anthony Ferkser, the top flight tight end that never quite developed that way. Had some good moments, but
Ferkser, he should be playing for Berserker.
I got one texter that throws out the draft part of this and says, everybody keeps talking about trading back. Brian says, I understand that and want to get more draft picks, but are you guys seeing a team out there willing to give up much just to go get the number one spot? I don't see a player or team out there that's worth giving up all that much.
How do you know? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Like,
I see quarterback needy teams.
There very well could be a scenario at the end of this where teams view this and say, yeah, we like Cam Ward, we like Shedeur Sanders, don't really love them, so we're not moving heaven and earth to go get them. And if that's the case, like, you have to be prepared if you're the Titans to pick somebody there. Like, you have to operate with the assumption that you're picking at number one until you're able to execute a deal. Like, you've got to have your ducks in a row of whether that's Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter, or heck, whether you like one of these quarterbacks or not. That should be the way you're operating right now until the deal comes together. Like, I think operating under the assumption right now, if you're this front office, that you're just going to trade out of it would be a dangerous thing to do.
Yeah, you have to be prepared to pick, and you have to be prepared to, I think right now you're still in the process. Sure, there's a pretty strong idea, and I do get vibes, but I don't want to overread into things because that you're wrong so often on that, but kind of get vibes that trading out would be preferred. But I think you're still in the process, if you're them right now, of doing everything you can to try to figure out everything you can about these quarterbacks.
Yeah. 615-737-1025, our phone number. The best and worst things in sports coming up next. We'll take your best things, your worst things on our text line, driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com. Robby and Rexrode, brought to you by First Horizon. Big bank muscle, small bank hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. We'll be right back. 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
The best and worst of the sports week. Now on Robby and Rexrode.
On ESPN.
102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
This is the worst. You look like you're feeling sorry for yourself. Don't even miracles yet. Unbelievable.
He's one of one. He is him.
This is a Coke bottle. It's not a crystal ball.
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
Okay, let's go.
It is time for the best and worst things in sports for this week. We'll take your best things, your worst things on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Joe Rexrode, kick us off with your best and worst things in sports.
I just want to give a shout out quickly to Adam in Portland, who says, my worst is that Robbie's a Packers fan and not suffering as a Titans fan along with me.
I enjoy the Tennessee Titans as well.
I like that, Adam. All right, my best in sports is the Kansas City Chiefs. I was rooting against them like a lot of people, but it's a great football team. Patrick Mahomes is the best football player in the world, and that's what the story is. You have some missed calls in games. The Chiefs are not, the league is not trying to, make sure the league would have been very happy with Buffalo Bills in the Super Bowl. The league would be happy with the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Cardinals Super Bowl. It'd still be the number one TV show in the entire world by far. And the Chiefs are great. And you got to tip the cap to their greatness. We'll see if they can make history. I think I'm kind of rooting for that now. But it's incredible what they've done to be able to, I guess you'd like to blow more people out, right? And be more impressive at times, but to always make the winning plays is truly amazing stuff. And I think some people are kind of missing that. My worst in sports, Adam Silver sometimes has some good ideas, but now he's floating the 40-minute, the 10-minute quarters idea in the NBA.
I think he might be an idiot. That's what I'm starting to discover.
Well, they're scrambling with that. I think a lot of this just goes back to the analytics people for these teams deciding, like your playoff success is way more if you have X number of minutes that you don't play. So they have, so then you rest guys in games, and now it's always like, hey, it has a strain. So fans show up to games to see stars in this league and get screwed over. And so they're trying to figure out, to me, it's like if you're going to do something, just cut games out. But I like this quote from Michael Malone of the Nuggets to ESPN. He says, I hope we don't go to 10-minute quarters. I hope we don't put in a 4-point line. I hope we don't become Barnum and Bailey.
Well said.
End quote. Well said.
Yeah, I mean,
stupid.
He's also the one who came up with a stupid in-season tournament. So,
yeah, and I guess it's fine. I don't think it's great by any means, but like that idea compared to this idea,
it's rough.
Pure brilliance.
Nick, these are your best and worst things in the world of sports this week.
Yeah, easy best here really quickly, and then I'll have an honorable mention.
Duval.
By far, I think the best thing that's happened in
Is
the
that the
last few
best?
days. I don't know. To me, I've really enjoyed seeing the memes that have come out with this. But no, on a real note, I enjoy blockbuster trades. The one that went down on Friday with the Carolina Hurricanes was baffling to me.
That's a biggie.
I mean, that was really cool to see happen, and we need more of that in the NHL coming up here in the next few weeks. Doubt we see something very similar to that, but hey, I always like big deals.
That'd be hard top.
Yeah. Worst, Joe, kind of on the same note, not with a new way to watch basketball. How about Joel Embiid missing 400 games? What a softie. I mean, dude, he's missed over
how much he's missed?
40. Yeah, he's missed over 46%. If I remember seeing that stat, 46% of the games in his career, which is wild to me. So that guy has been paid millions and millions and millions, and he's coming up very, very poorly for the Sixers. So I wanted to point that out. So he has missed over 400 games now for the Sixers.
Let's send this to Philly radio. Nick Keyser calls Joel Embiid soft.
I like it.
A softie.
I mean, I imagine he's probably been called worse in Philadelphia.
That is
be
true.
my guess.
Yeah, nicest thing that they'll say on the airways about him there. Yeah.
My best thing in sports, Mark Byington and the job that he's done with Vanderbilt basketball very quickly. Huge win against Tennessee and follows it up at home the next week with a big win against Kentucky. It's fun to watch. Like they have really, I'm singling out Mark Byington here because it's been such a dramatic turnaround there. But like, look at their athletic program right now. Vanderbilt football has had, their most memorable year in a long time. The basketball team's off to a great start. The women's team is playing really well. And you've also got, Tim Corbin in baseball coming up. Like their athletic department as a whole right now, Joe, is in as good of a place as I can ever remember it at Vanderbilt.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first time all three, the both basketballs and football ranked in the same school year, and their facilities are all of a sudden good. It's like, wow, you look up and holy crap, they got a lot done. Candace Lee deserves a ton of credit.
Well, she at least deserves somebody to help her out going around the student section. Be like, hey, can you please not rush the court today?
See it now. If that was the game that Jelly Roll came to, he could have gone.
He could have done it.
He might have actually. You know what I mean?
But now
scared the kids. Into
I'm going to be pulling
like
crazy for Vanderbilt to beat Auburn here in the next. I don't even know where they play here in the next few weeks.
Yeah,
but that's a big game at home. Like, you imagine they're up by 5 with like 4 minutes left, and it's just like, oh my goodness, please. We do not want to pay $800,000 for this.
$1 million.
Good stuff. Good stuff. My worst thing in sports is this Super Bowl. I've tried. I can't get excited about it. It's brutal. And look, it's no disrespect to Kansas City or Philadelphia. Credit to them for being consistently good, particularly Kansas City. But, I mean, we just had the Super Bowl matchup a couple years ago. And by the way, great game a couple years ago. So I don't know what I'm complaining about. Yeah. It just, I can't do it. I can't get excited for the Super Bowl. I can't do it. I've tried. I just can't do it.
I can't make you. I don't think you're alone in that. By the way, Alex on the text line says, Adam in Portland is going through it. Man needs to take a break from sports for a minute.
Wow.
Adam,
Adam
did you take a break? Did you take a timeout, Adam?
There are times that Adam in Portland on our text line receive some hate.
He does. We usually don't read them because usually they're way meatier than that one.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. I feel for you, though, Adam.
I do too. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think. I mean, I think I think in my life, this is definitely the best that everything has been going at the same time with Vanderbilt sports. I don't know if there's a particularly close second.
Well, yeah, so you go back if you want, because that's the thing. If you go back to Jim Foster had the women's program going really well.
Yeah.
And men's basketball definitely has had some good stretches, but
football wasn't.
Right. Then football wasn't. Here and there they may have had a decent year. I mean, we can go to. I should ask my Vandy historian and my editor Mitch Light, but yeah, like all of that. And again, you go back enough to what like with basketball had some good times in the '90s stuff, but then baseball was a total non-factor.
Exactly.
Baseball was nothing before. Basically before Corbin got here. It's really impressive. And, honestly, football is the most surprising. But men's basketball being this good in year one with Byington with kind of a thrown together roster, man, like you wonder with everything they have going for them, what does that mean when he actually gets a chance to, get some recruits in who, can stay multiple years and things like that. I know he's got a really good freshman from BA here this year, but I mean, like, it could be awfully good. It's impressive, man. Kentucky and Tennessee in the same year.
Nice apology from you yesterday too on Jared versus Joe and Jerry Stackhouse front.
Yeah, whatever, man. It's hilarious. So again, it's like I lost because my apology wasn't good enough. I still don't know what I'm like. I'm apologizing for like not saying fire him in year one. I guess like again. Yeah. Oh, we had a million conversations about Jerry Stackhouse.
Jerry Stackhouse, Bobo.
Yeah, exactly. So Jared's apology was for again, like, they're not really going to spend this money. Like, Jared, there's a press release. I don't think they're putting out a press release that they have $300 million. Like, if they don't, I mean, I could be wrong. I don't believe that. So, he apologizes for just a ridiculous take, which he should. And I'm apologizing for just, I guess, again, not just saying someone should be fired in year one, which, again, if you're Jared and you do that all the time, there's sunlight, there's a dog's ass. It hits it sometimes.
615-737-1025. Our phone number. That would make the Keyser file at some point.
Let's hope.
I
smoke weed constantly.
Yeah, we'll get into one of Joe Rexrode's
constantly.
Thank you.
Consistencies on this program, which involves really hating on another human being out there. We'll
It's
get
not
more into
true.
that
It's not
coming up
true.
next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Hour number 2, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Thursday morning. Robby and Rexrode brought to you by First Horizon. Big bank muscle, small bank hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. Charles Robinson will be with us later in the program, coming up at 8 o'clock. Normally joined by a Predators coach on Thursday mornings. Andrew Burnett will join us tomorrow morning at 7:30. Preds are off today. They're traveling to Buffalo. So Burnett will be with us tomorrow morning at 7:30. Taking your thoughts, 615-737-1025. Joe, we ended the show yesterday with Kuharski, kind of looking at the Super Bowl matchup with Kansas City and Philadelphia. And the question came up, like, what does Patrick Mahomes have to do to surpass Tom Brady as the greatest quarterback, greatest football player of all time? Now, he is seemingly well along in that path. I mean, he's talking about a guy that's got 3 championships already. He's going for number 4 here in a couple weeks. And already when you look at some of the all-time postseason passing numbers and wins and all these things, I mean, the guy's 29 years old, and he's already either at the top of a lot of those lists or near the top of a lot of those lists. So off to an unbelievable start. He's been the starter for 7 years in Kansas City, and the worst finish they've ever had was losing in the AFC title game, which they've done twice, one to Brady and the Patriots, and then one to Joe Burrow. And he also lost to Brady in the Super Bowl against Tampa Bay. So other than that, he's finished with a Super Bowl championship in every year of his career with an opportunity to do it again. So look, there's a very real possibility that when everything is said and done with Patrick Mahomes' career, that we consider him the greatest player of all time. Now, the problem with these discussions, people bring this up all the time of like, what does so-and-so have to do to be the great? Like, these are always subjective discussions, right? So
Yes.
You're never going to have like some hard-line final answer on this. But I ask you, as it relates to the path that Mahomes is on right now, what more does he have to accomplish in his career in your mind for you to consider him the greatest of all time?
Well, I'm glad you brought up Kuharski because the show ended before I could properly skewer him. Because, of course, it's got to be the 7. He's got to pass the 7, according to Kuharski. So Brady has to, or that's what Mahomes has to do. But then with Jordan LeBron, I just think he's a better player. Oh, okay. Now, I understand.
Now, Jordan also has more championships.
Jordan has more championships, but that wasn't his criteria. It was like, I just think he's a better player because we were also talking longevity, right? Longevity has to matter. Longevity does have to matter. There are a lot of great players who just their careers get cut short, and usually it's because of injury in this sport. So I just disagree that he has to have. Does he have to have 8 rings to be considered the best over Brady? I disagree. What does he have to do? I don't know. I don't think he's there yet because that last championship for Brady, to me, is a difference maker. I know, you expected me to come on this segment and just rip Brady, but I'm going to
get your thoughts here in a minute on Bill Belichick trying to rename the Lombardi Trophy after Brady.
Now that is, hey, Bill, get spring practice ready for the Tar Heels, okay? Yeah. We get those cones out on the field, buddy. We don't need to hear your thoughts on the Brady Trophy.
I think they should rename it after Tom. Tom's won 7 of them. Thanks, Bill.
Yeah. Bill, I really enjoyed you in media, but now you need to get out there and get in the portal, okay? You need to get in the portal and get some players. Yeah, that's stupid. The Lombardi Trophy, again, we don't need 10-minute freaking quarters in the NBA. The Lombardi Trophy is a very good name for the trophy. It's what we're used to. It's tradition. Let's go with some tradition. Can we? But no, Brady, to me, Brady going to Tampa Bay, because look, we've talked about this before. Man, when they lost that game to the Titans and, they did nothing on offense all night. And it really, that whole year, I get why the Patriots were ready to move on. I was like, yeah, okay, he's done. He's at the end of the rope here. It's been an incredible run. What he did in Tampa Bay after that was incredible. And so that to me is like, I'm not saying that Mahomes has to have like some second act in, with the Giants and win a Super Bowl with them. And then it's like, oh, now but I'm just saying that makes it, that's awfully impressive of what Brady did. So my whole thing with the GOAT, again, it's like shorter careers. I mean, I still think that Peyton Manning at his best, is the best quarterback I've ever seen in the NFL. That's just, again, like you said, it's subjective. It's totally subjective. I would go back to a few of his seasons around 05, 06, right in that range, 04, 05, I think that's the best quarterback I've ever seen in the NFL. And, there are numbers to, back that up in terms of his performance. He also had great weapons, by the way. So, Peyton's Harrison, Edger and James, Dallas Clark, Reggie Wayne. That's probably a better collection than Brady ever had. But for Mahomes, it's just, if Mahomes gets to like 5 and he ends up playing long enough to have more passing yards and all that stuff, then I think it'll be a healthy debate.
I think it will be. Look, he's undeniably on that track. Now, there are some people, and I don't necessarily subscribe to this, but I have heard this. Some people say he'll never pass Brady because they played twice in the playoffs and Brady got him both times. Like Brady got him with the Patriots in the AFC title game for a Super Bowl in New England. And then Brady got him in the Super Bowl with Tampa Bay.
Yeah, they don't play one-on-one.
Yeah, like I don't necessarily subscribe to that. I understand like the head-to-head stuff, but it's not basketball. Like you're on different sides of the ball. They're not playing against each other. So like I don't necessarily subscribe to that. I do think somebody brings this up, Alex, on the text line. It's an interesting point. Like at some point, Mahomes needs to do it with a different offensive play caller. Him and Andy Reid's a great combo, but Brady showed he could do it in the different setting. At some point, he's probably going to have to. Like Andy Reid's not going to. I would be surprised if Andy Reid is coaching for the rest of Mahomes' career.
Yeah,
and maybe he is, but I would be surprised if that's the case. Is that a prerequisite? No. Because I look, Andy Reid is a great coach. I think Bill Belichick was a great coach. But I think it's also become clear that the Brady was the most important part of the Brady-Belichick dynamic.
The players, we're sitting here. Yeah, and I don't know why. I'm not trying to take shots at Stilly, but he's sitting here like trying to make it like Reid is more important. Reid benefits from Mahomes more than the other way around. Come on. The coaches benefit from players more than the other way around. Let's please all agree with that.
Well, look, Andy Reid's a great coach. I think Andy Reid was a great coach before Mahomes.
Absolutely.
Like he was a great coach before Mahomes. Now, one of the knocks on Andy Reid before Mahomes was that he couldn't win the big one, right? Like there was a stretch of the NFC title games in Philadelphia where he finally broke through and won one of those NFC title games, got to the Super Bowl, and then lost Brady. But like he couldn't win some of those big games. It's amazing how you can all of a sudden win some of those big games when you've got the best player on the field. So, I think independent of who their coaches are, they both had really good coaches. Both had two of the greatest coaches that we've ever seen in the history of the game. But I think their play highlights that. Like Bill Belichick is a great coach, but Bill Belichick's record without Tom Brady is right around 500. Like it's just it's not all that great. So like to me, the coaching part of this, those two will always supersede whoever their coach is.
Absolutely. And there's always nuance with all this. I mean, Brady beat Mahomes. Brady's defense was dominant. They dominated the Chiefs. They dominated the bad Chiefs offensive, and then also banged up Chiefs offensive line. The Chiefs could not do anything up front offensively in that Super Bowl. That's why the game was won. That's what won the game. But, we'll just talk about Brady. Brady also beat Russell Wilson head-to-head. You know what he did? He stood on the sidelines and said, yes, they threw the ball on first down from the 1. Oh, my God, I'm so happy. That's what he did. That's how he won that ring. Did he make plays in that Super Bowl? Sure.
Yeah.
But he was sitting there losing the Super Bowl, and Pete Carroll gave him a gift. So, and let's not even get into Kyle Shanahan.
That's true. Craig says
he also won a bunch, and he was great.
Yeah, I mean, look, he lost one where he played the best he played in any of them. Like he lost the Philly one.
Yeah,
where he threw for 550 yards in that game. Like he was unbelievable.
And Nick Foles beat him.
Like honestly,
Nick Foles,
like Brady over the course of his career, it probably evened out in terms of the Super Bowls he should have won and should have lost. Like, the David Tyree catch on the helmet. Like they should have won that game. So it probably evened out with Brady over the course of his career in terms of the amount of Super Bowls that he should have won.
Yeah, but the David Tyree catch was a crazy play. But like the Seahawks, that is an all-time. That might be the worst coaching decision of all time. Right?
I understand that, but like again, he threw for 550 yards in a Super Bowl and they lost.
Yeah, Yeah, that one was crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, that was one of the best Super Bowls of all time.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
I'm
he-
just saying, like,
he
in
was great.
totality, it probably ended up at 7, probably where it should be.
But the Eagles, yeah, I hear you. But the Eagles, I mean, he should have won. Like, if you tell me Tom Brady throws for 500 in the Super Bowl and Nick Foles is the other quarterback, I'm like, oh, okay, so they won by 40?
Exactly.
But I mean, but that was one of those where like the Eagles just couldn't be stopped. That was
Great,
also
great coach game.
well, seriously, that might be the best coach game ever. Like I was like convinced. So Doug Peterson is the next genius in the NFL.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Jacksonville had that guy.
They did. Duval.
We'll continue this discussion coming up next. What does Mahomes have to do to surpass Brady as the GOAT? More coming up next. We'll get your thoughts on Bill Belichick's idea to rename the Super Bowl trophy after Tom Brady as well. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5-106.3 The Game. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Got some tickets to give away. A family 4-pack of tickets to the Athletes Unlimited Professional Basketball Games coming up at the Nashville Municipal Auditorium on Wednesday, February the 5th. You'll get tickets to games 1 and 2. Tip off at 5 o'clock. Stars playing include Alicia Clark, Sydney Colson, Lexi Brown, Jordan Hurston, Isabel Harrison, and more. Be caller 5, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Caller 5 will win a family 4-pack of tickets to the Athletes Unlimited Professional Basketball Games coming up at Municipal Auditorium on Wednesday, February the 5th. Taking your thoughts on the Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes GOAT discussion. Dean from Old Hickory says Mahomes doesn't have any cheating controversies. It's from Dean from Old Hickory. So maybe put him at the GOAT already.
I mean, I wasn't going to bring it up, but I don't think it's a terrible thing to bring up.
Patrick, have you deflated any footballs recently? Any drones or Spygate cameras that you found?
Yeah, no, that's on Bill. That's more the Belichick. Yeah, look, the Deflategate thing. Again, it's like if you're a total Mahomes sycophant. I mean, not Mahomes. If you're a total Brady sycophant, Roger Goodell. Or, they beat the Colts by 1 million. Yeah, again, no one's saying that they would have lost the game. But, I mean, look at all the circumstances of that situation and tell me that he didn't do something he shouldn't have done and then get rid of his phone. I mean, come on.
He would not do that.
He did do that. So, I mean, hey, look, is it the biggest deal in the world? No, but there's a reason that, they have those levels, and there's a reason people want to deflate footballs when it's that cold out.
These discussions always are interesting to me too, from this standpoint, because some of this is just generational. Like for some people who grew up watching Tom Brady play. Now, granted, growing up watching Tom Brady play lasted over the span of 20 plus years. So that's a long time. But there are some people
crossed over.
Yeah, like there are some people that it doesn't really matter what anybody else does. Tom Brady's always going to be the greatest of all time. Like it's in some ways it's similar to Jordan, right? Like there are some people that it does not matter what anybody else does. Michael Jordan will always be the greatest basketball player of all time. That's why, first off, that's why these discussions and arguments sometimes are fun, because it is so subjective and there's different criteria that you can introduce if you want to. Like it's a credit to Patrick Mahomes that he's 29 years old and we're having these discussions about him already. Like,
yeah, exactly.
It's unbelievable what he's doing.
Yeah, you never would have guessed that late in Brady's career that there'd be anyone. It would take a long time, right, for somebody to enter the discussion. Evan says Mahomes says all the refs protecting him when he flops. And I will agree on the flop part.
He does flop.
He takes advantage of the way they protect quarterbacks today. But as far as the refs protecting him, go talk to like some Bills, Patriots, Jets fans about Brady and go talk to the Raiders about Brady and refs. This is always, whenever there's a great team, I think sometimes there are star calls and there are maybe great team calls.
Yeah,
I think that's a thing. But trust me, you think that people weren't complaining about the refs and the Patriots when they were great?
Oh, for sure. It happened all the time. Now, I will say, I do think earlier in Brady's career, it was harder to play offense. Like, I think with what they allowed to happen, like some of the hits that they allowed over the middle, quite frankly, some of the hits they allowed on the quarterback, like I think it was harder to play offense earlier in Brady's career. But that's the thing. Like, Brady's career spanned such a long period of time that he was pretty darn good in that era and he was great in the next era. And he got kind of both sides of it in this discussion, where Mahomes is not going to get that.
Yeah. And this gets a little bit into the NBA discussion, which I'm not going to go there because I always lose my mind yelling about how people don't realize that these NBA teams of today would destroy the NBA teams of the 80s, which I love. I won't go there. But if we're going to talk about quarterbacks, we could definitely talk about how they used to get hit, and that's a valid thing to bring up. And that's kind of like the NBA, right? It was way tougher. And
there's this play that Brady got hit on against, I think it was Buffalo, that keeps making the rounds all the times, where he like scrambles out and he gets his head taken off.
Gets blasted.
And I look at it now and I'm like, oh my God, they'd kick that guy out of the league. Right. And in that play, everybody just gets up and they go right back to the huddle. There's no flag.
I know. Yeah, no, for sure. And that is a fair thing to bring up. They got hit. It's also, like, and I'm not even this discussion, but just go back to other quarterbacks before Brady. The game was different. I mean, how about my guy Dan Fouts? Can I bring up Dan Fouts in this?
Friend of the show.
That's right, friend of the show, Dan Fouts. But I mean, guys like that, the numbers are they're not what they were at all. Even for most of Brady's career, the game had Brady. So that team, what was that? Was that 06, 07?
Yeah,
the Patriots team.
Yeah,
right?
07.
Yeah. So I mean, you're talking about 6 years into his 7 years into his career, right? I think he was 2000 draft.
Yeah.
And at that point, I mean, that team was using air raid concepts. They'd taken all that stuff from Mike Leach. They were ahead of the curve with that. But that was the type of passing offense and concepts that the quarterbacks before him did not have. You know what I mean? So the game and they changed the league a lot, I think, with that season, and we've seen where it's gone in, and the rules have changed, all that stuff. I'm just saying, old past quarterbacks also don't have the benefit of what today's game is. And again, I think Brady, mostly his career fits into the new era that way.
Well, also, there's a heck of an opportunity here for Mahomes because, quite frankly, it's really hard to play the quarterback position and do something that Tom Brady hasn't done. There's just not a whole lot of things that Brady hasn't done. Well, he never won 3 in a row, and he's got an opportunity to win 3 in a row here, which I think factors into the discussion. And look, if they win 3 in a row, I mean, who are we going to be to sit here and doubt that they could do 4 in a row? What if they come on some run here where they win 4 or 5 in a row? At this point, I'm not discounting that as a possibility for him moving forward.
Right. And Craig says if he gets that 3rd straight, how much does that help? Yeah, I mean, I think if he said something Brady never did, sure. I mean, I think that's winning this 3rd straight would definitely be one of those things that, whether they do what you said or not, would be something that enters the argument. If Mahomes ends up with 5 or 6 when he's done, well, Brady never won 3 straight. It'll be argued forever and ever.
It will.
I mean, Brian says different time, different game. No way Mahomes would survive the game of the past. Really? He wouldn't survive it? So were these quarterbacks from back then, they were just cyborgs? I mean, look, they took crazy hits. There's no doubt.
Well, we all know Brady's a physical specimen.
Yeah. Pliable, as Vrabel said.
He is pliable.
Yeah, I think he'd survive it, man. Again, this gets into these NBA players, they'd go out there and Rick Mahorn, they would have been dirty with him. They would have hit him, and they would have let a lot of stuff go, and they probably would have got up and then made a shot.
615.
They're not killing each other. This isn't Gladiator.
615-737-1025. Our phone number. We'll take more of your thoughts on the Mahomes Brady discussion. We'll also get into the Nashville Predators coming up next. A loss last night to Vancouver. So what is this going to look like for the Predators from now until the trade deadline? Who could be on the move? And a scenario that Adam Vingan and myself discussed yesterday that I think the Predators could be in position to take advantage of. We'll get into that. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5-106.3 The Game. We are taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Robby and Rexrode brought to you by First Horizon, big bank muscle, small bank hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. The Nashville Predators losing last night 3-1 to the Vancouver Canucks. So, Joe, after winning 5 in a row, Preds have now lost 2 in a row, and the offense has once again become a problem. Now, Saturday, they generated just a ton of attempts. I think they were over 80 shot attempts in that game Saturday against Anaheim, only got 2 to fall. Last night, I thought, after the first period, they played pretty well again offensively, and they just couldn't score. They had 2 crossbars last night, and it felt like the same story that I could tell you about, 20 other losses that they've had this year, where they did some good things, and ultimately they just could not score. And Thatcher Demko in Vancouver, who has struggled this year coming off the injury, looked like Thatcher Demko last night for Vancouver. So, again, the playoffs just are not happening. They put together a nice 5-game run, and really, when you look at it, didn't make up any ground at all in the standings. Like, I think they were 14 points back when all that started, and right now they're 13 points back. So they've really not made up any ground after winning those 5 games in a row. Vancouver's back in a playoff spot after the win last night. And the playoffs, just with the math trickling away right now, just not happening. Like, it's going to take almost a legitimate miracle for the Predators to get into the playoffs. So having said that, NHL trade deadline is closer than the date would suggest. Now, it's the first week of March is the NHL trading deadline. That seems like it's still a pretty significant ways away. But you've got 5 more games if you're the Predators before the Four Nations tournament, where there's a 2-week break in the schedule where nothing's going to happen there. So we're getting pretty close to the trade deadline starting to become a pretty serious factor here. And it's going to be interesting to see how teams view this. We've already seen one massive trade in the NHL, which happened last week. Do teams want to go ahead and get ahead of the Four Nations break and have their roster set by the time they come out of it? Is it going to go all the way down to the deadline in March before teams start going crazy? I'm interested to see what happens there. But I think it's pretty clear Barry Trotz needs to be a seller. So who could be on the move between now and then? Gus Nyquist is a pretty easy contract that comes to mind. He's on an expiring deal. I think he could be on the move. Beyond that, would you consider trading a Colton Sissons? Would you consider trading a Jeremy Lauzon once he's healthy and gets back into the fold here? How if you're Barry Trotz, Joe, looking at this, how deep down the roster are you willing to go in terms of a sell-off here if you're Barry Trotz?
That's a good question. I think that you have to me, be doing everything with the mindset of, well, next year is still in this window of built around these older guys and having to be good, trying to be good with really a lot of it is like as simple as hope.
Yeah.
Hope the start is better. Hope the goalie plays like we're paying the goalie to play. Hope a lot of things come together. So I guess I'm not doing anything drastic. The drastic sell-off was 2 years ago, right?
Yes.
I mean, unless you disagree. I mean,
no, I agree. I don't think you can do anything drastic.
Yeah.
Like, the other part of this is, like, the players that would fetch you significant returns here are all under trade protection and under contract. And in some of those cases, like, they're old and they're not going anywhere. Like, really the one intriguing guy is like Ryan O'Reilly. Like, is Ryan O'Reilly a guy that you would consider moving, and what would it take to get it? Now, we talked about that specifically last week. What would it take to get O'Reilly? I think somebody would have to just blow Barry Trotz away. And look, with Ryan O'Reilly at his age, I don't know that anybody's going to be willing to do that with 2 more years left on his contract. So I would say the chances of them moving on from O'Reilly are pretty small this year at the deadline. And then beyond that, like, you're not trading Forsberg, you're not trading Yossi, you're not trading Stamkos or Marchessault, both because you just signed them and because with their contracts right now, I don't know who's taking them. Brady Shea, you're not going to be able to trade because it's not going well for you right now. So you're just kind of stuck from that standpoint with a lot of these guys. Here's a a situation that if I'm the Predators, I would be and probably have been monitoring pretty closely. The team that just came in here last night is in their own version of a soap opera. Right
Oh,
now.
yeah.
They've got Elias Pettersson, who, as we know, is a great player and has been a great player for a pretty significant amount of time in this league at this point. He signed an 8-year deal with Vancouver where he's getting paid $11.6 million per year. So he's been a 100-point player in the league. He's 26 years old. He's a centerman. He's been paid a lot of money. He and JT Miller, who is also a great player, not getting along. To put it lightly.
Not having a great time.
It's been a wild year. JT Miller left the team for a couple of weeks for personal reasons. There were rumors that he and Pettersson weren't getting along, and they did their best to kind of shut that down. And then 2 days ago, their president of hockey ops, Jim Rutherford, basically came out there and aired everything out in the media. Said, yeah, there's a basically irreconcilable differences between Pettersson and Miller, and we're going to have to trade one of them, is what he said. So I think he's preparing the fans for a trade that is coming at some point. Now, maybe it doesn't happen this year. Maybe it happens in the offseason. But it looks like Vancouver's about to have to move one of JT Miller or Elias Pettersson at minimum. And he also talked about in that piece, like, if they get to a point where that messes with the team and it tears it down, then he's going to completely tear it down. And then you're talking maybe moving both of them and Quinn Hughes, which would just be, if I'm a Vancouver fan,
oh, great.
unbelievable that this could get to that point. What does that have to do with the Predators? Okay. How long have we been talking about finding a centerman around here?
Forever,
Since they've come here. How often does a 26-year-old 100-point player become available in the NHL?
Very rarely.
Not very often. Now, Pettersson is not perfect. And quite frankly, his play since he signed the contract, it's not been bad, but it's not been elite. Like, it hasn't been what they've paid for him to be.
I mean, he was a big disappointment against the Preds in the playoffs.
He was. So there, you have to keep that in mind. Now, how much of that is all this crap that's going on around them right now? I don't know. He's in year one right now of that 8-year deal. So you would have him under contract until you're 33. Now, there was reportedly a deal that was being worked on and in place to send Pettersson to Carolina before the Rantanen trade happened. So they've been shopping these guys around. I'm just saying, like, it's a lot of money. I think there's some flexibility that the Predators would have to find a way to create, and they'd have to get creative to do it because you're taking on a $11.6 million cap hit if that happens. But we've been sitting here screaming about finding a centerman for the history of this franchise. Like, I think you'd be doing yourself a disservice if you're Barry Trotz and the Predators not to at least turn over every rock and see if you could find a way to pull this off with Vancouver and Pettersson.
Yeah, I mean, it would be huge. I guess when I look at those two guys, I think back to the playoff series. Like you said, it hasn't gone as well as hoped since the big deal. You tell me, you got a much better feel for that team, you know, in this league than I do. But it seems like JT Miller is kind of like the gritty, tougher guy that you want, and Pettersson is sometimes maybe a little too finesse. And I don't know if that's part of the whole thing with them or whatever, but that's sort of been the thing, right?
JT Miller's a gamer, and he's in your face, and he's a little brash. He's a little surly.
He's in Alex Doherty's face when he tries to ask him a question.
He was. I got a front row seat to that yesterday. It was fun.
Yes.
Now he's also 31. JT Miller is 31, which is, I mean, it's not old, but he's not 26 entering his prime. So, look, I
could just see Trotz not being excited about some of the things about Pettersson.
I could see that too. And look, the way that Pettersson has played over the last year is concerning to me. Like, before he signed the contract, I mean, the dude was a lock. I mean, in 2 seasons ago, he put up 102 points in 80 games. He scored, let's see here, 39 goals, 63 assists. I mean, he was one of the best players in the league. And since then, like last year, he was good. He scored 89 points. He had 34 goals. So you're talking about a guy that's flirting with 90 and 100 points every year. Like, you don't ignore that.
That's something that the Preds have never had.
Exactly. Now this year, he's played 44 games. He's got 32 points. 11 goals, 21 assists. Like, it's okay. It ain't worth $11.6 million this year. But again, how much of that is this absolute circus that's going on around him?
And how responsible is he for the circus?
Exactly. These are all things that you'd have to look into. But I guess the larger point is, we keep talking about this path to find a centerman and path to find a centerman. And if you're not going to be horrible and draft a McDavid or a Bedard at the top of the draft, it's hard to find one. Well, this may be your opportunity to find one. And you've got 3 first-round picks this year. You've got a good, pipeline that you've developed here. I don't know exactly what Vancouver would be looking for in a return here. But the other part of this is, like, now, especially now that their president of hockey ops has just aired this out for everybody, like, they're not going to win this trade. Like, they're not going to get a satisfactory enough return for a JT Miller or a Pettersson at this point, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's not necessarily the best way to go about things before you again, they've been trying to move them, as you said already. But, yeah, look, I think it could be a great opportunity. And, the O'Reilly talk, I've been of the mind of, like they're light at center,
Yeah.
He can move to different parts of the lineup, but, like, you don't take away centerman right now from this team. But obviously, if you were to make this move, could that be part of it, along with whatever else, everything else that they want? I mean, maybe then that would make more sense.
Yeah. Now again, you've got to find a way to get. I mean, $11.6 million cap hit is a heck of a deal to bring in here when you're already paying Stamkos and Marchessault, and those guys have trade protection, and Forsberg and Yossi and Shea. Like, they've got a lot of money tied up right now. So it's not going to be like the easiest thing to just be like, oh yeah, bring him in, because a lot of those guys I don't think are tradable either. So, like, how much money can you really move out of here if you're Barry Trotz is going to be interesting to see. Like, there are going to be a lot of people checking in on this. I would imagine ever since this Jim Rutherford thing has come out that the Canucks are fielding some calls right now. Is it worth it if you're Barry Trotz to throw your name in the hat for Pettersson?
100% to get into the conversation.
I think so too. Like, you could you could get into the conversation for Miller as well. I think
a young player would be nice.
Younger player would be nice. Like, that's the other part of this. And you brought up, an article this week at The Athletic from Joe Smith. He did a nice job kind of like highlighting Steven Stamkos. There was another one at The Athletic earlier this week, basically talking about how the Predators have gotten in this hole. And the concerning part about them getting out of it is they're old. Like, their forward core is old. So finding a way to thread that needle of making it a little younger while also bringing in a great player at the same time, I'd be trying to figure that one out if I was Barry Trotz. That's just me.
Yeah, I like it. We're in agreement.
What do you make of that idea that I've thrown out there? Should the Predators try to involve themselves in the Elias Pettersson sweepstakes out there for Vancouver? We'll take your thoughts on that. The Rob Rant coming up next. Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports will be with us at 8 o'clock. All that ahead. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
Don't make me angry.
Sometimes you have to tell someone to pound sand.
You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
This is the Rob Rant. Now on Robby and Rexrode.
Whoa. Hold on. I have to interrupt you. People spell it like clenching your butt cheeks, you're saying? Like, who does that?
That's what we're saying.
Yes, exactly. I'm just saying that there are you find out, it's like a little Easter egg. You find out who out there is spelling it the wrong way.
There's sunlight. There's a dog's ass. It hits it sometimes.
Son, you just listen to me. Things are going to be fine. That's really the general takeaway. It is that time of the day. Time for the Rob Rant here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. I have no idea what that first one was in reference to, but I don't even recall that conversation.
Neither do I, but we certainly talk butt a lot here.
Buns.
Yeah, this show is buns. Apologize to Kyle Tucker and his family. His kid, that comment that Nick just replayed apparently made it into the Tucker. Yeah, asked me what that. He asked his dad what that meant. I apologize. I got to remember to say these things when the kids are all in school.
Yes.
That was from Alex Doherty talking about clinching versus clenching. Do you remember that?
The playoffs, yes.
Yes.
Okay, I remember now.
Yeah, had to bring up hockey somehow. But kind of hard.
So did someone actually said, wow, we clenched a playoff spot?
Yes.
That actually happened?
Yeah.
Okay.
CLENCH.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Way to go.
Cool.
All right, so we've just brought up the Vancouver situation and could the Predators put themselves in position to take advantage of that? We will get back into that conversation here momentarily. For 1 minute, how do we get to this point in professional sports? You've got a team that, number one, has been disappointing this year. The more that comes out about this, it's not hard to figure out why. It's a disaster in that locker room. But you got a team that last year looked like they were on the verge of being one of the breakout teams in the West, right? You've got Pedersen, you just signed to your deal. You got Quinn Hughes, who won the Norris Trophy last year and is having a better year this year than he did when he won the Norris Trophy last year. You got a goalie that you love. Now he's been dealing with some injuries in Demko. And you've got JT Miller, who's still an elite player at age 31. And it looks like, Joe, they are on the verge of blowing this whole thing up. And if I'm a Vancouver fan, I'm sitting there throwing my hands up in the air and I'm saying, what could possibly have happened here where you guys can't put this behind you? There's only a few things in life, Joe, that I can think of where you just can't get past it with somebody. It's unbelievable. I don't want to speculate as to what's going on here because I don't know, but I can't imagine what in the world's happened here where they've gotten to the point where the president of hockey ops is out in the media basically just being like, yeah, these guys we've tried to get this thing fixed and it gets fixed for a little while and then they just go back to hating each other again. So we're going to have to do something about this. I don't know that I could recall seeing anything quite like this.
No, it's wild. I mean, for one, you could look at it a little bit is Rutherford. I mean, I think it was already sort of out there, right? But it almost seems like he's trying to blame everything on that. I mean, there are maybe other issues, but like you said, if it's really to that point, what the heck happened?
Yeah, I don't know. And
Vancouver fans blaming one side or the other?
I think they're mad at both of them.
Well, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. What exactly happened? Look, I've covered teams where relationships ended that had to do with significant. And again, I'm not saying this about this, but I'm just saying I have covered a team where very close players became enemies and it had to do with a significant other.
Yeah.
So I've seen that before.
That would be one of the situations that I'm referring to
as
probably pretty tough to get past that one.
Yeah, there's that, and I don't know what else. You know?
I don't know. It's why. Also, this is also a league where they don't have enough drama. There's not things like this that really happened in the NHL, which makes it weirder. It's in some ways, we've talked about this, their stars need to be less boring, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
This is definitely not boring in Vancouver.
But that's why I needed, when you and Alex were there talking to JT, I needed to say, yeah, that guy sucks, and I'm going to kick his ass if he walks by me today.
I was leaving open the possibility last night that, there's fights in hockey. I've never seen teammates fight each other, but I was leaving that door open last night.
That's amazing. I mean, it really is. But you're right. I mean, it's this league. I mean, we just had the Rantanen trade, so you have stuff like that.
Yeah,
That's fun. But
trades are fun.
But yeah, the personalities. I'd love to know. I mean, I'd love to know exactly what all went down here. Like, I'm fascinated. In the meantime, Vancouver fans a year ago are like, we're coming here. This is happening.
Yeah.
And now it's going to get blown up in some way.
It's pretty crazy that it's gone down this way. Josh from Lebanon, would you be willing to part with a top 5 pick in this year's draft for Elias Pettersson? Where at in the top 5? That would be my question. Like, is it number 2, number 3,
Or number 5?
or number 5? If it's number 5, I probably would. If it's number 2, I would not. That would be how I answer that.
Okay.
Because just from the information that I have gathered, there are 3 guys in this draft that I think could be foundational players for your team. And if you have a chance to draft one of those, then I would rather draft one of those than pay $11.6 million to a 26-year-old.
Yeah. Okay. So that's your line. The line in the sand is pick 4, basically.
I think.
Okay.
Well, the problem is one of those 3 is a defenseman. So how do you feel about that? Now, again,
they're not great there anymore.
They're not great there. And also, like that defenseman, as I've talked about here on the show, and I just read another draft report about it last night. They're compared to Cale Makar.
Cale Makar.
It's like, okay, it's Cale Makar. I know people get like bored with the idea of a defenseman. If it's Cale Makar,
that good. Changes your team. Yeah,
pretty good.
Yeah. Is he likely to be the 3rd pick?
I think it just depends on who gets the picks. Like, if I'm San Jose, I'm probably taking him number 1.
Yeah.
If I'm Chicago, then I probably need somebody with Bedard, and I'm taking one of the forwards. If I'm the Predators, I'm taking one of the forwards. So it just kind of depends.
Well, we know Chicago's getting the first pick, so yeah, it really comes down to their choice, what they prefer.
Could be. 615-737-1025, our phone number. Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports will be with us. Coming up next, we'll get into the Titans and all things NFL with him. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Final hour, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Thursday morning. We are taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Robby and Rexrode brought to you by First Horizon. Big bank muscle, small bank hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get it all. We head to our 102.5 The Game phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in our friend Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports, talking all things NFL. Charles, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well, gents. How you doing this morning?
Doing great.
Super.
Appreciate you taking time to be with us. Charles, I want to start on the Buffalo Bills. So a great season for Buffalo once again. And once again, they run into this absolute machine in the playoffs. That is the Kansas City Chiefs. And, I mean, you could see it on Josh Allen's face after the game. Just total devastation. And it's just kind of the same old story where you just can't get past Kansas City in the playoffs.
Right.
So what do you make of kind of where they go from here and the fallout from all this, having lost to the Chiefs now for the fourth time in the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, it's like what now is become the question to define the Chiefs, the Bills, 4 playoff losses to the Chiefs now. And, and in different ways in some ways, different personnel, different criticisms coming out of all of them. I think the one thing for me, having covered the game and sat there and really watched how it unfolded, was just how shockingly limited the offense looked at times, where you're sitting there and you're watching it and you're saying, okay, you've got Josh Allen. If ever there were a quarterback that fits into offenses that are vertical and have the ability to throw the football down the field, you're watching over and over this offense is throwing the football behind the line of scrimmage, at the line of scrimmage, and you're saying, like, what are you doing? Like, where is the big play possibility here? Do you not trust Josh Allen, or do you just not have the pieces to try to I guess seize big plays in this game? And Keon Coleman's obviously a player that they drafted coming into this season, but he's a player that didn't have a ton of separation in college. Khalil Shakir is probably the most vertical player that remains on that offense. Size issues are there for him. I think for me, I thought, okay, you have a great team, you have a great quarterback, but you don't really have, minus Stephon Diggs, and they convinced themselves coming out of last season, we don't need this guy anymore. They don't have really a big time downfield playmaker, and it showed, I thought, late in the game against the Chiefs. So for me, I thought, all right, well, what's one thing you could change coming off of this game? Because you got to find something, right? And I just thought, like, vertically down the field, big time playmaker. They don't have that anymore, and I don't know that Diggs would have been that for them. He'd aged out. Obviously, they subtracted him from the offense last season, and the offense got better, but they never really fully addressed it. Even when they drafted Coleman, when I talked to people in personnel, they're like, yeah, he's size-wise, he's what you're looking for, but he doesn't really fit the X receiver. He's not going to be a burner down the field. It's going to create a lot of separation. If anything, maybe they should play him as a big slot. They really didn't do that with him. They tried to keep him at the X. And you saw, he was limited as a player. He can't get a ton of separation in college. He couldn't do it on the NFL level. So I think it was clear to me that's something that was lacking. But at this point, the Chiefs have beat them, four times in kind of 4 different ways. And I said it leading into the game, if Josh Allen doesn't win this one, we're going to start to look at him like Phillip Rivers. And I know Robert Griffin has come out afterward and said this, but this is a comparison I was making a couple weeks ago. This is Phillip Rivers running into Peyton Manning. This is Phillip Rivers running into Tom Brady. Like, at some point, you can't just put up numbers and be prolific on offense. You have to win these games. And at this point, Allen hasn't been able to do it. And I think I've covered all 4 of these losses, and every single time
You're
I've
the
walked
problem.
away. Yeah, yeah, right. The common thread, but you see the damage on that guy. You see it occurring. Like the 1,000-yard stare is so real with Josh Allen, and to me, I think this is it. Like if they don't figure it out now at this point after 4 losses, and I kind of felt like it was like this after loss 4 or after loss 3. I was like, all right, if they don't figure this out, it's just never going to happen. But that feels very, very real, for the Bills, and I would imagine at some point you have to consider a coaching change, no matter how good Sean McDermott's been and how great the record's been. If you have a guy who can't break through against the Chiefs, and the Chiefs have been retooling constantly, if guys going in and out the door, you got to change the head coach. Like it's just it's hard to say that because it's not like Sean McDermott hasn't been successful, but you have to be able to get over the hump at some point. And in a weird way, it's almost a little like you look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with Tony Dungy. Like they were like, we're just not getting this done with Tony. Like we need to go get John Gruden. We need to go get something else to change the matrix here. And it definitely feels that way with Buffalo.
Yeah, I do think I would like to see the exact same game played with a legit deep threat. I mean, at least the Bills, I think, have that as something to identify, but it's got to be way past old. All right, the other guy on the other side, Charles. Of course, we've had the GOAT discussion today, the GOAT discussion, and it'll go on for years and decades. But I mean, if Mahomes gets a third straight, which no one has ever done in the Super Bowl era,
right?
With apologies to Robbie's Packers. What kind of a benefit is that to him in the discussion? And in your mind, does he have to get 7 or 8 rings for that to even be a discussion, or do you not look at it that way?
Well, I mean, look, he's 29 and they're already on the doorstep of doing something that Brady, if we're going to say Brady's the GOAT, right? Like, I mean, that's the premise here. We're going to start with Brady and we're going to say he's the GOAT. What he did with, New England in terms of a dynasty is the defining dynasty of the NFL, at least, in the Super Bowl era now. At 29, I mean, Mahomes is about to do something. Well, he's already done something potentially. Not potentially, he's already done something that Brady and New England never did, which is win 2 Super Bowls and now be on the doorstep, be in the game for the third, and the opportunity is three-peat. So automatically, we're talking about, if we're comparing resumes, he has put something on his resume that Brady has never had. And if he wins this game, he's put something on his resume that nobody in the Super Bowl era ever has. So it creates a more interesting argument, because you're like, well, okay, does he really have to win 7 Super Bowls if we're comparing him and Brady, because he's now doing something that Brady never did? And I think that boosts the argument of Mahomes being in that conversation, or potentially taking the lead between these two guys. I hate to say that, because this is like our talk, right? This is, if it's just us hanging out, this is what we'll argue about, right? And the great thing though is that he's 29. Like, this is going to go on for a while. It's barring injury, barring something changing with Andy Reid, and I don't think Andy Reid's going anywhere. I remember, last Super Bowl, I asked Andy Reid. I was the one who was like, "Hey, are you staying?" Like, when he won the Super Bowl, I was like, "Are you retiring? Like, can you definitively answer that you're going to be here next year?" And the vibe I had gotten at that time was, Andy doesn't want to go anywhere. He just wants a contract extension. Like, it's time. And it was sort of similar to when you started to hear,
did we lose Charles?
Hello, Charles.
Oh, sorry, fat cheek. I fat cheek the mute button. Every time a guy wins a Super Bowl, you always hear of, like, it's like a player or a coach. It's like, does he want to hang it up? They never want to hang it up after winning a Super Bowl. Really, they want to get paid. And I think Andy was in that box last year. Once they did the contract extension, it was clear he's not going anywhere anytime soon. So Mahomes and Reed are going to be together for, I think it's fairly clear this is going to be another at least 3 or 4 years that Mahomes and Reed are together. And, if he wins this one, there was a time maybe a year or two ago where I was like, are we really doing this with Mahomes? Are we really going to talk about, can he accomplish what Brady did? I didn't think it was really possible. Now we're here, and I'm like, yeah, this is totally possible. Like he absolutely is a player who could play until he's 40 years old. He does a really good job of not taking hits, which I think Tom did really well over the course of his career, other than the one knee injury. Mahomes he gets banged up, but he never is. I don't think he ever gets like completely tattooed consistently in games where you're like, okay, he's going to have a shoulder, he's going to have some knees, and that will cut his career short. So I think he wins this one. Realistically, we are now talking about where does he already fit in that conversation with Brady? And I do think he has the potential to exceed it. The one thing I will say, it was funny because I was having this conversation with somebody yesterday. People can compare him to like Jordan, right? It's like the Michael Jordan talk. And I think it's, and some people say Tiger Woods. I think it more leans into Tiger Woods just because he has started so fast, so dominant, so quickly. And, look, the three of us are all of a certain age. We remember when Tiger started out, we were like, he's going to smoke Jack Nicklaus's record. Like, this dude is flying. We have no idea what's coming. Next thing we knew, his now ex-wife is smashing out the windows of the SUV with a golf club. And
life comes at you fast.
Yeah. Life comes at you fast. He's got a back injury that completely changes the trajectory of his career. We don't know if that's something that's, if there's something down the line that's potentially coming from Mahomes that could change this. But at the rate this is going, I don't think it's not absurd at all now to question whether or not he could exit this with 7 Super Bowls or more. I think Andy Reid, it was funny because we were talking about Belichick a couple of, a month ago, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, when we're talking about Belichick potentially coming back in the NFL, because of this idea he's chasing Don Shula's record for wins. I'm like, it can't be that important because he knows he's going to lose it anyway. Andy Reid is going to be the winningest coach in NFL history if he just hangs around. And yeah, I mean, that's going to happen. So even if Belichick had broken that, he knows Andy Reid's coming on like a freight train and has the guy that's necessary to go another decade, winning like this. So yeah, it's miraculous that this has kind of unfolded the way that it has for Mahomes, and the quality of how he plays and how the Chiefs tune it up and ratchet it up when they need to is really remarkable. The one thing I will say, I'm going to be curious to see what happens when you take Travis Kelce away from him. That's the one player that has been the common thread through this. And in some ways, like when Brady was continuing, to win Super Bowls, I always thought like, man, Rob Gronkowski is really a piece for him that I'll be curious what this looks like when, Rob eventually retires. I think it's the same with Kelce for Mahomes. I don't know. I think he's far more difficult to replace than even a Tyreek Hill.
So, Charles, a lot of conversation around here on the Sam Darnold front as it relates to quarterback and free agency. Now, we've had a lot of conversations with you about Sam Darnold throughout the year. I guess my question for you right now is, from the Minnesota perspective, what do you think the plan is for next year at quarterback? Like, is it as simple as Darnold's back? They won 14 games with him last year. He's the guy. Like, is Darnold on a short leash and they're going with McCarthy at the first sign of trouble? Like, how do you view that, and how realistic do you think it is that Darnold could be attainable for the Titans or anyone else this offseason?
Well, if we've talked about him. We've talked about him repeatedly, but I think things changed so much the last 2 games of the season for him. Whereas, look, if you'd asked me, first week of December, second week of December, I was definitely saying, hey, he's not going anywhere. Like, absolutely. They're at least franchising him. He will be back in 2025. There's no doubt. And then, he loses his last 2 games, obviously against the Lions and then the first round against the Rams. And I think, and we may have discussed this on the show, like I talked to somebody in the franchise, and I think the red flag for them was, he lost them in different ways. It wasn't like it was this common thread of, okay, we looked at these 2 losses and it was the same issue. Like, either he, failed in this very specific way or we failed in this very specific way. I think their problem, and particularly head coach Kevin O'Connell's problem, was when he looked at it, Darnold had opportunities against Detroit that he just left on the table. Like there were clearly moments where he could have seized that game and he just missed throws, was inaccurate. It was totally a Sam problem. And then they play the Rams, and that loss, that I think the concerning quality of that for the Vikings was, he when he got pressured, there was a ton of pressure in that game. His clock sped up a ton, and he started to not see his reads downfield. I think I told you on the show, like when I talked to somebody in the organization, he had faded into pressure a couple of times. They're like, what is he doing? Like, why is he not stepping up out of this? He's at a stage of his career where you can't be rattled and then fading into pressure. You can't be creating bigger problems for your offensive line by walking into sacks. And that was different than the Detroit game. He looked a lot like, against the Rams, he looked a lot like the Sam Darnold where he's, quote unquote, seeing ghosts. He's not getting to second and third reads. He's seeing pressure that doesn't exist. And, I think for the Vikings, that was extremely alarming because they're like, oh God, we just lost 2 huge games, but they were very different and they all sort of focus on this guy. And so I think that really changed the dynamic. Then when you watch the postseason press conferences with Kevin O'Connell and the GM Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, they were very much leaving the door open to not having Sam Darnold in 2025. I still think part of this comes down to price. I think the Vikings are sitting there, and if they could have Sam Darnold back on a quote unquote value contract, let's say it's like $35 million AAV, and they only have to give him 2 years of guaranteed money, I think they'd think long and hard about that, because they would look at, okay, it's really a 2-year deal. We're totally fine, developing JJ McCarthy for another 2 years. And we did get top level, play out of Sam for the vast majority of this year. We just know now we really got to make sure we tune up that offensive line. We really got to make sure we have a better running back. Yes, he's got, great skill position pieces, but running back and offensive line are 2 things that we have to focus on this offseason. I think if they feel like they could get him at 35, that would be a difference. If they don't, and I don't think they will anyway, I think there will be other interest out there. Beyond the Titans, I think the Raiders are a team that will look at him. I think there's probably a mystery team that'll get thrown in there. I wouldn't be surprised if the Steelers got involved. I think there will be enough of an appetite for him that will limit the ability for the Vikings to get him back cheaply. And really that's what will turn them into the JJ McCarthy plan. But I can't guarantee it because when you talk to teams right now, there are so many unknowns. It's crazy what this quarterback market could ultimately look like. We're finding out that Matt Stafford wants to play in 2025. I don't know yet what the Rams' appetite is to continue down that path another year with Stafford. What's going to happen with Cousins? What's going to happen with both of the Steelers quarterbacks? I could see a team, whether it's the Raiders or someone else, saying, okay, we could bring in Russell Wilson as a bridge. Justin Fields, I could see a team saying, hey, he's got the talent to at least bring in and potentially allow him an opportunity to fight for our starting job. And we'll see if he's either a bridge quarterback or a young guy who can turn a corner, maybe like, some of these other, like a Darnold has or a Geno Smith has elsewhere. But mean, this is going to be a wild offseason because there are just so many veteran quarterbacks. There's like 4 or 5 guys that really have to set the table before we even get to the draft and understand, can Jalen Milroe move up the charts? Can, Jackson Dart's a really popular guy right now in personnel circles when you talk about a quarterback that has the ability to move up a draft board. How do Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, how do they ultimately slot themselves in this process? But yeah, I mean, it's wild to me because a couple of years ago I was talking to Sean Payton when Goff and Stafford were traded for each other, and I was like, this is crazy. Like, is this what the NFL is going to be like? Are we going to have veteran quarterbacks, accomplished quarterbacks, switching teams in the offseason like this? Is this great migration one year, or is this normal? And Peyton was like, let me see it for a couple of years. Like 1 year's, that's not a trend. Like, we have to see this for a few years. It's a trend now. It happens. So.
Okay, a couple of things following up on that. First of all, I guess I'm missing something with Stafford because, I mean, of all those people, to me, he'd easily be the most attractive option. What are the Rams going to do? And also, I wanted to real quickly get a follow-up on Jackson Dart. Are you suggesting that he's so popular that he could be, Bo Nix and sneak into the first round all of a sudden?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think Dart's got the potential for it. And I thought it before the Senior Bowl started because I knew, like, okay, Milroe and Dart, these are 2 guys that when you start to talk to personnel people and you're like, okay, let's get past Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. Is there anybody else that, is there any ability for quarterbacks to potentially move themselves in the process? And Milroe and Dart were the 2 guys that immediately had, guys that were like, yeah, look, when the process started last year, we didn't think there were going to be 6 quarterbacks that were going to get, taken in the first, what was it, 12 picks. And no one would have believed that when the process started last year. We were like, we started talking, we're like, oh, there's going to be 5 first-round quarterbacks. And it was like, oh, there could be 6. No one thought these guys are all going to go in the top 12 picks. But because of the need, and how quarterback works in this league, they always get pushed if they have talent to the top of the draft board. And I think this is going to be that case where 2 things. I mean, number one, we could see it could be different with Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. Maybe it won't go exactly the way we think. I mean, maybe one of these guys goes high, another one maybe is Shedeur or Cam. I mean, we haven't really seen it unfold yet. One of these guys, quote unquote, slides a little bit. So maybe he's not a top 2 or 3 pick. Maybe he's a top 10 pick, but he goes a little further down than we thought. But in that same vein, we could potentially see, Milroe. Milroe has a great week. From a running standpoint, from a tools standpoint, I mean, there's an argument to be made like, hey, compare him to Anthony Richardson. And, I mean, Anthony Richardson gets pushed up the board. Why wouldn't Milroe?
Except that we've seen Anthony Richardson in the league now. I mean, I don't think it's a good comparison anyway. I think Richardson's a way more arm talent, but regardless.
Sure. Yeah. But I mean, but there will be an argument. Like, guys will say he's a better runner than Richardson by far. Like, it's not even close. And we have seen him develop, at least there has been an arc of development in college. Now, he loses his offensive coordinator in Alabama after 2023, being Tommy Rees, who's now he's obviously a coach for the Cleveland Browns. But people are going to say, well, geez, he took this huge step forward in 2023. Then the offensive staff changes at Alabama. He's not there in 2024. And that, maybe that's the reason why. Teams start to create reasons why a guy flattens out, the development flattens out. So I could see that argument made with Milroe because of what changed on that offensive staff in 2023 and 2024. It takes a big step in 2023. Staff changes. That growth flattens out in 2024. But you could see teams making the excuse saying, no, had everything remained the same, he would have taken another step forward. There's an element of continuity that was important in Alabama that he didn't have. And, that matters. And so all of a sudden Milroe starts to get pushed up. Now he has to do well, obviously, in the pre-draft process. He has to do well at the Senior Bowl. Dart's the same kind of situation. And I had already heard guys saying, look, we get it. There's some things not to like about Dart, but if you go across the board in terms of size, what he can do in an offense, statistics, the conference he played in, he checks all these different boxes. And then if he has a really good run up to the draft, that's a guy that could get pushed up the draft board. And then Jim Nagy comes out in his Senior Bowl press conference and says, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he says, when I added Dart, I think he said it was the most calls he'd ever gotten from teams after adding a quarterback to the mix at the Senior Bowl of ever. Like Dart was the most calls he's ever gotten, or messages from, guys across the league. So that instantly creates additional buzz. But even before that, I had already heard hey, don't be surprised if maybe some of these teams at the end of the first round that have potentially aging quarterbacks or changes that could be made at quarterback, if Jackson Dart starts to be that. I mean, I heard with the Rams, that was a guy. He was a guy, that potentially if Stafford is absolutely not a Ram in the 2025 season, that Dart was a player that they really like. So, they could affect the process. And I was talking to a GM a couple weeks ago just about what the draft was going to look like from a quarterback perspective, and he said then, when we started last year, you had no idea that Bo Nix was going to end up going where you thought he was going to go. You had no idea that Michael Penix was going to be, maybe he could be a fringe first round pick. He goes at 8. He's like, we have no clue at this point what the development process is going to look like for these teams sifting guys out. So I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up going from 2 quarterbacks to maybe.
Charles, very interesting stuff, man. Really appreciate your time to be with us this morning, and we will talk to you next week.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Have a good morning.
Yep, you as well. Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports, our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. Lots of really interesting stuff there from Charles on the quarterback front. We'll get to all of it coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Nashville's best deal this week is Single Tree Barbecue in Murfreesboro. Single Tree Barbecue, a local veteran-owned and operated business, only serving world-class barbecue with the perfect combinations of sides and desserts. Get half off a $25 gift card now while supplies last at thegamenashville.com/deals. Robby and Rexrode brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. Appreciate Charles Robinson for being with us in the last segment. Joe, a couple of things there. Pretty interesting. Says that some talk around the league that Jackson Dart could sneak into the first round there and add another quarterback to the mix in terms of first-round potential options. Let's start there. What do you make of that Charles just kind of threw out there on Jackson Dart?
Surprises me. I mean, I hadn't really considered that, but it sounds like there's quite a bit of chatter in that regard. And I hear what Charles is saying, and again, the phrasing is important on Jalen Milroe, which is basically teams making excuses for him and talk themselves into, changed OCs, changed system, et cetera, et cetera. I would stay. I don't see it with him. I don't see it with Jalen Milroe. And I will say that, I know, as you know, Robby, I'm an expert quarterback evaluator. I'm always right about it. A year ago, I was absolutely like, okay, take another step, and yes. But I thought he was so bad this year, second half of the year. I don't know what happened. Maybe there's some explanation. Maybe he had a broken thumb. We didn't know about it, but he just was terrible.
Apparently, he wasn't very good at the Senior Bowl the other day either.
Yeah, so I just
take that for what it's worth.
I would be shocked. I mean, I would be surprised if Jackson Dart gets the first round too, but I'd be shocked if Milroe gets in the first round. But like you said, these quarterbacks get pushed up, and teams need quarterbacks. And I mean, the Rams thing is just I don't know. Like, the Rams going to trade out Stafford for Jackson Dart?
If Matt Stafford is available this offseason, then I mean that to me changes the quarterback discussion a little bit, right? Like, I think it has to. He brought up Darnold, so we've talked with Charles about Darnold all year because we've known that quarterback conversations are coming for the Titans. That was a different tone on the Darnold front than he's had really at any point this year in terms of the actual realism that he could be available. Obviously the way their season ended has affected people within that building. Now, I still think it makes a lot of sense to tag him, and then you can either trade him after that, or you can start next season off with him as your quarterback and kind of slow play it with J.J. McCarthy. So if I had to bet, that's still probably the way I think this ends up going here. But that sounded to me from Charles there that he was more open towards the idea of him being attainable this offseason than at any point where we've talked to him this year.
Yeah. And I get it because played well, and then you get to those big moments. And there was an interesting point he made too about how it was two different kinds of failures from him in those games. So I just have a hard time believing that they're going to say, hey, the rookie, we loved him. Sure, he's coming off an ACL and has never played a snap in the NFL, but let's go. Because, we're just following up a 14-win season.
Right.
Let's throw caution to the wind. Hard for me to believe that they're going to do that, but maybe those two games really soured them.
Maybe so. I mean, look, they've made no secret about it either. I mean, they love J.J. McCarthy. So do they feel like he's ready to play next year? That's also the interesting thing is, like, if they do bring back Darnold, how short of a leash is he on? Like, if he struggles out of the gate, are they immediately turn into McCarthy? Even if they give Darnold a lot of money, either via tag or a short deal that Charles was talking about there. And also, like, if you're Darnold, what's the market going to be like for you this offseason if you made it to free agency? Like, did the last two games scare people off enough where they're not willing to hand you the deal that you're wanting? I mean, look, I think the idea that he's going to make, $50+ million a year on like a 4-year deal is probably out the door, given the way that the season ended. But will somebody commit to him more than Minnesota is willing to?
I would have to think so. And look, it could be this is a prime candidate as a franchise that would look at that and say, hey, that's good quarterback play. Sign up for that, build the team, and then maybe he can take another step, or if not, you've you've gotten yourself back into the land of the living.
We'll have to kind of drill down a little bit more on the Stafford part of this next week, because to me, if he's available and he wants to play, then I think that changes the conversation, not just for the Titans, but like the whole league. Like he would be the best option, I think, available via free agency if he's out there, even at his age, I think.
Yeah. He's still, I mean, look, that team was banged up. First of all, his number one receiver for a long time is diminishing, and Puka Nacua was hurt half the year. When they had everything together, I thought he looked like Matthew Stafford to me.
Yeah.
What, 30? Wait,
He's 36.
37? He's 36.
I think he'll be 37 in a month.
A young pup. You
Yeah.
got 5 more years left in you, Matt. What are you doing?
He'll be 37 on February the 7th. So you're in the next week or so. Happy birthday, Matt.
Yeah. Happy birthday, executive co-producer Tom Izzo, by the way. 70 years old today.
Absolutely. 615-737-1025, our phone number. More thoughts on what Charles Robinson had to say as it relates to the quarterback position for the Titans this offseason and some potential options that could be available. We'll wrap up the show with that next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in. Final segment of the day. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Tune in to 93.3 FM, Totally Hits Nashville tonight for MTSU men's basketball. The Blue Raiders taking on New Mexico State at the Murphy Center. Tip off at 6:30, pregame beginning at 6 o'clock. Coverage also available on the Totally Hits Nashville app and at totallyhitsnashville.com. Lots of thoughts to get to on the quarterback front. Gino says Sam Darnold doesn't have the, quote, nervous system that Callahan is looking for, which he is quoted about saying is the most important QB trait that he's looking for. This is from Gino on the text line. Doesn't have the nervous system.
He's saying Darnold doesn't.
Darnold, yes.
For a minute you said Gino. I'm like, wait a minute.
Well, Gino is the texter.
We talking Geno Smith now?
Gino
Is he
texter.
available? Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, Darnold surprised me last year. I definitely think more of him now than I did a year ago. I definitely did think about, Cinderella and the pumpkin, when I was watching the last two games, but he's one of the better options out there for sure. Speaking of Geno, now I think of the Seahawks, which makes me think of, the Russell Wilson thing's interesting too.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, we don't ever talk about Russell Wilson. I'm not suggesting that he'd be like top of my list, but that is going to be really interesting with the Steelers and what they decide to do moving forward.
Are the Steelers going to choose one of those two guys, or do they have somebody else in mind? Like, is Kirk Cousins a landing spot? Is Pittsburgh a landing spot for Kirk Cousins? And again, like if Stafford becomes available, how much does that change this? Like, how does do the Steelers go after Stafford at that point? Like Stafford and his availability with the Rams could be a game changer in all this.
Yeah, we know that there's going to be a couple quarterbacks in a couple places that we had no idea, and we're going to be. It happens every year, which is fun.
Yeah,
I mean, it makes it a lot more fun. Not that the NFL needed any help, commanding headlines in the offseason, but there's going to be some surprises. Yeah, it's interesting from the Stafford perspective on that. I mean, if I'm Stafford, yes, I still have a lot of game left, I think. I want to keep playing. I also want a chance to win. Do you want to go to the AFC? Like, if you're a quarterback now, wouldn't you rather be in the NFC just because, at least from a quarterback perspective, you don't have to get past all these guys who are so freaking good?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Now, having said that, the NFC had two 14-win teams this year. What were the Eagles? A 13-win team. You had the Packers at 11 wins. Like, it's pretty loaded conference.
Yeah, but the NFC North is just like the SEC, man.
It just faded out in the playoffs. Yeah.
Fake, paper lion.
Apparently so. I'm with you. Like, the path is easier in the NFC just based on the quarterbacks that you don't have to deal with. Now, there's Jaden Daniels coming up. We'll see if he turns into one of those guys.
Yeah.
But no doubt, I mean, you're not staring down the barrel of Patrick Mahomes in the AFC, which right now is the great separator. Even with Burrow and Allen in there as well, and Jackson.
Though I could see the Steelers' job being attractive to someone who thinks that they could be the difference maker and a really good quarterback could be. Russell was good for a while this last year, but then he kind of faded. Yeah, he faded, and some bad turnovers late in some of those huge games. So if you're Stafford and you feel like they can shore up some things offensively, they've got the interesting thing with Pickens too, who is an incredible talent, but is obviously disruptive and a pain in the butt.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt.
Their D's kind of getting older, and it's just not the same D it was.
Yeah. I mean, but they always find a way. Like with Tom, they always find a way to be decent and in the mix. Quarterback and what they do there is going to be really interesting. And then the fallout from that. So, like, if they decide to go in a different direction, whether that's Cousins, Stafford, whoever, like, who's interested in Russell Wilson? Who's interested in Justin Fields? Like, I still got a tough time believing that Justin Fields is going to be a starter somewhere next year, but maybe he will. I mean, it just depends on kind of how everything slots up there. Like, I would probably rather go get, in terms of a bridge quarterback, Russell Wilson before I did Justin Fields. But, like, what do the Raiders do? Like, what are the Raiders doing at quarterback? And how do they – like, a lot of these decisions, Joe, are going to be made before the draft. Like, these free agency decisions are going to be made before the draft. So we're going to have a pretty good picture maybe of the way teams are thinking when these quarterbacks become available,
Yeah,
including the Titans.
Yeah, the draft it'll just look so different than it does now because we'll have so much more information on quarterbacks going to different places. The Raiders feel to me like, although it's not like Pete Carroll's there for the 10-year plan, they do feel to me like a team that needs to get in here and draft somebody.
And he's had Russell Wilson before.
Well, there is that. Yeah, that's interesting. I saw someone writing about the possible reunion there with Russ and were he and Pete Carroll
kind of
cool?
not in great?
Yeah, I thought it wasn't exactly the greatest of terms. But maybe I'm just thinking of all the teammates who weren't invited to his birthday party. I don't know. I can't keep up with Russ.
I can't either. And then Darnold. Everything's equal. Let's say Darnold becomes available. So Darnold's available and Stafford's available. Like I think Stafford slots in ahead of Darnold there in terms of like desirability.
Would to me, absolutely.
Particularly if you're a team like Pittsburgh, it feels like you're just a quarterback away right now. So what does that do for Darnold? And like where do the Titans fall in the pecking order of all this? Let's say they're interested in the veteran quarterback. Well, if I'm Matt Stafford and I'm looking at the Titans right now, I understand money talks, but there's a whole lot of money you'd have to give me to come be the quarterback of the Tennessee Titans right now.
I don't see it at all. I think a guy like that would be so hard to get. It'd be harder than, with Darnold. With Darnold, first of all, you take a good contract if you can get it. You've earned it, but you take that. And with Darnold, you could be talked into, hey, you grow with this team. You can help lead this franchise back. And we got all these we got like 17 different GMs.
Stafford doesn't have that long left.
Right. Like a Darnold, I could see being more attracted to a situation like this, that being a more viable. Yeah, Stafford's going somewhere. And like, again, I don't know that you look at the Steelers if you're Stafford and I mean, it's the Steelers. It's a legendary organization. It's a great organization, but do you really look like you can go there and get them over the hump?
No, we just rolled through all those quarterbacks and didn't even bring up old Pawpaw, Aaron Rodgers out there. What's he going to do?
Well, someone in the text line just said, let's get all Wes in Clarksville. Let's get all the fame and fortune. Draft Shador, bring in Aaron Rodgers to mentor him. You sign Aaron Rodgers, then you draft Shador, and you got what a quarterback room that would be.
That's who you want.
I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Ooh, Jonathan says, what about Marcus? Good point.
Marcus will be out there.
But if I'm the Commanders, don't you like that as a backup? I think stylistically,
I think so.
It's not that different. And yeah, just stay there.
Let's go back to being the backup in Washington. And he got in a game this year, played well.
And then he got in against the Lions, and I don't know what the heck happened there. Didn't matter, though. They still beat the Lions by 1 million. Take a shot at the Lions in the show.
They did. That's going to do it for us today here on the program. Loaded show tomorrow. We'll have Stilly. We'll have Andrew Burnett, TD. So lots to get into on the program tomorrow. Hope everybody has a fabulous rest of their day. Jason Big Joe is coming up next. You're listening to 102.5, 106.3 The Game.